Hi guys, I just want to explain the OSI 7 layer model to you. It does seem a little bit complicated at first. You don't really need to remember it all, but you just need to know of its existence. And you do need to be able to explain each individual layer for your work as well. Basically, it's a model, so a structure for how data is going to be sent across a network. It is fairly straightforward, and every diagram and every explanation you look at will probably be a little bit confusing at first, but if we just break it down, it should hopefully become a little bit more clear for you. So, if we have a look, as you see, 7 layers, yeah, all the way down here. Application, presentation, session, transport, network, data link, and physical. Each of these layers work together, and it's the way for the data is shown to connect to different computers or devices such as your phones, or even like the actual network devices like the routers and things like that. And it breaks it right down, right from the very bottom bit, which is the actual hardware talking to each other, sending those like bits of data, the binary zeros and ones. Okay, and then as we go down, as we go through each layer, it actually becomes more like the actual data that we're used to sending and receiving. So at this very top layer, the application layer, that could be, for example, your email that you've actually typed out, put a picture in, and then sent, or something like that. But in between, there's little things, and basically it's how it's put together and how it's set across the internet. A few things you do also have to explain TCP/IP, and that TCP/IP is actually included within, to a certain degree, within the OSI 7 layer, but you'd have to explain them separately because they do link together. So, as I stated, the physical layer, which is basically connects with the transmission, reception of unstructured raw bit stream. Okay, what that means is it's just the zeros and ones that the hardware, the computers understand that we probably wouldn't understand, or it'd take us a very long time to understand if we were to look directly at and read directly. The computer's obviously programmed to actually intercept that and actually convert it into the layers above. So once it's got its data and it's been converted into zeros and ones by the computer, then the data link has to be made. Okay, and a frame is captured. Yeah, and the things that are in that are basically the addresses of where it's going. It's the hardware address. We call it the MAC address. It's highlighted just here in this particular diagram, and that's every single piece of hardware that's created for to be used on a network and the internet and things like that is encoded with a code. Okay, it's different from your IP address, which I'll explain in a second. Your IP address is actually set by the computer, and you can change that as a user, or you can actually get your ISP who provides your internet to change it for you as well. So, which actually brings me on to the network address. Okay, so we've got the MAC address. It finds the hardware or the various pieces of hardware on the network to transfer through, and it knows about it on a machine level, knowing machine code. It also then looks for and converts it to the IP address, which is the software level. Okay, so it's an IP address, a bit like an actual written address. If you try and think of it as this would actually be the street location, if you think of the streets as wires with a location, that would be this bit. This would actually be, the human version of that, which is actually, the address and name of the street. And then we've got TCP/IP, and that's how it's going to be transferred. So it's how data's got some flow control, how it's going to be sent and received, and how big are the packet's going to be, and things like that. And basically, host to host, or is it multiple hosts, and how is it being patched together, and how is it being sent? Then we have the session level, which is the level 5, and that's the sync and send ports, and that's the actual ports on each computer at each end, which is basically the open doors. If you've got a firewall, these have to be defined and set so that data can get in and out of a computer. So that has to be encoded within level 5. Presentation, is how is it encrypted? Is it decrypted? Is it how is it put together? There's various different languages. You probably heard of computer languages. Well, networks are no different. They have their own languages for transferring the data and things like that. And that has to be set at both ends. It has to both be the same. In fact, all of these sort of things have to be configured at both ends for a network connection to actually be made and for data to be sent effectively. And then you got the application level, which is what I said before. That would actually be, your Word document or your PowerPoint or the written email or the actual what we see as the user and how it's being sent. So, as you can see, it's gone from zeros and ones and it's been converted all the way up, and it might go up and down this at both ends. So, for us, for example, write an email. We start at the application level. Okay, it gets broken down into encrypted or decrypted and into the language it's going to be sent across the network in. It then gets selected to a port. There's thousands of ports. Emails have a dedicated one, such as port 25, which is for sending emails. Port 80 is web traffic, for example, and there's loads of others defined. They're the only two that I can think of off the top of my head. Then it gets discussed how fast is it going to go and how big the packet's going to be and things like that. And then it gets packed into the network layer where it actually gets turned into the packets, and it gets given the IP address, where is it going on the internet. That IP address is then converted into a MAC address, which is the data link layer. Okay, it's captured into frames, pulses basically, that go down your network wire and down your telephone wire if you've got broadband or things like that, and that's how it's sent at that level. And then it's the physical level. That's the zeros and ones and how those switches, how those zeros and ones are going to affect all the hardware along the way. You know, it has to be instructions so that when it receives to a switch or a router, for example, it gets sent to the right place and directed into the right place. And then at the other end, it's converted all the way back down, the opposite of what I just said. So that if it is an email, for example, it gets converted from zeros and ones, with those transmission pulses into something, understandable by the computer, and then into something understandable by us. Very sort of complex and long explanation. Now, I hope that's clarified it for you. You can search for loads of stuff on this on the internet, and I also found as well some really useful sort of pictures. If I just slide across to this one, it's a very simplified version of what I just said, and it kind of shows the types of data we're going to be talking about. In that, at the application layer, it's data. Yeah, it's data that you're typing into me and you type into the computer. And then at the presentation, it's still data. Yeah, okay, it's still actual, data. It's been converted. It might have been encrypted, and it's been packaged and ready to be sent across the internet. Then still data at the session level, okay, but it's been converted into a lot more computer reliant. It's getting converted into zeros and ones, and it's getting packaged and ready to go still. Then it's being transported. That's when it's actually going across the internet, okay, and it gets sent in segments, gets broken up. Okay, into bigger so as you can see, you've gone from the whole data, get broken up into segments, and then in the next level, the network level, it's sent in packets. Okay, packets are then broken down into frames. Again, remember I said those were the pulses that get sent across the internet until it gets broken down into the very, very smallest bit it could be, which is the zeros and ones which are sent. And again, the number of those will depend on the actual network and speed, things like that, and then repackaged all the way across. So just a few useful things that might clarify that for you. But basically, this is the way data is transferred across the internet. It's broken down, sent across, and reassembled at the other side. I hope that's good for you guys. Speak to me in class if you're unsure. Check the book, and there's plenty on the internet.